first, I just want to say a big thank you to the New Haven AGO, to Cesar Starlazzi, to Carolyn Craig, and to Stephen for having me over to present this workshop. I'm very excited for this. And thank you all of you for coming, and this is going to be lots of fun. I'm going to go back and forth between teaching and having moments of participation. So let's get started. I'm going to share with you the handout on the screen, but at the same time, if you want to skip through pages, you can have it on another device or your printout or anything like that. Okay. Did they save the handout? Okay, great. So first thing I want to start with is I believe that everyone can improvise, and the improvisation seems like a nebulous art to many. It seems like you just make up something on the spot, but really what I think of it as is you create the illusion of making something on the spot. What we do is we take all of these written works and we assimilate them, figure out how they work, and put them all into a way we learn the simple rules for how to compose and apply that to improvisation. So I like to learn to start people off with improvisation, just as we did through the centuries, starting with Baroque music and going from there. So I always start students off with these counterpoint fundamentals. And the reason why is that these are something that both advanced learners and total beginners can learn something from. Because often when we improvise, we may know how to doodle with chords and things like that, but we may not have the rigorous counterpoint that goes with it. So that's what this session I intend to have as our goal. And language learning is my other passion besides music. And when we learn languages, we always have what we call can-do statements. We figure out what is it that you want to do, and then we break it up into little bite-sized pieces. So how can you introduce yourself? How can you use vocabulary for the supermarket, things like that. And then you gradually attain the end goal of being fluent in language. In the same way, that's what Johann Joseph Fuchs did in 1725 with his Gradus ad Parnassum. This is a treatise that basically he saw that there is a problem, that all of the theorists of the time were making treatises that were talking about how music works, but not necessarily how someone gets from beginner to advanced on their own, how you can do that. So Gradus ad Parnassum is literally the steps to Parnassus, how we take this huge goal of improvising or composing counterpoint and breaking it down into small sections. So the first thing I like to mention with that is that counterpoint versus harmony is this huge thing. Now we're very harmonically based, but the origin of Western art music was first we had monody with Gregorian chant, things like that, and then we had all of this where we put things together. You've heard of organum, probably, where you take a chant and then you stack in intervals, maybe parallel fifths, parallel octaves, like that. You stack on top of the chant. Then we got to the Renaissance where you start having contrapuntal lines. Back then they didn't think of chords. It wasn't 1, 4, 5. It was literally 2 voices, 3 voices, 4 voices in counterpoint. And this coalesced later on in the Baroque period to be when we got figured bass, things like that, into the classical period when we started thinking in Rameau's style of harmony treatise, where we thought, there's a 1 chord, there's a 4 chord, there's a 5 chord. So as we go through this, try to not think exactly 1, 4, 5. Try to think, kind of erase all of that we know and go back to how they were thinking about counterpoint in the 16th century, in the 17th century, because this is how Bach and Buxtehude, all of our favorite organ composers of the time, were thinking about counterpoint and how to improvise and create music. So literally, counterpoint is from Latin. It's punctus contra punctum, note against note. It's how we take one note and we match it to another one. And one big thing to note about this is it's going to sound very rule heavy at first, but even in the treatise, Fuchs talks about this, that there's a musica speculativa, musica activa. There's a theoretical side that we learn the theory, and then we use that to then make our actual practice of music more knowledgeable and more fluent. So the strict rules that we're going to use is to provide the foundation, and then later when we get into the actual improvisation, we use what we know from that to then get us this fluent melodic lines and things like that. So let's get into the rules of counterpoint. This is going to be like a crash course in Fuchs's treatise in 1 hour, and then we'll use it. So the counterpoint rules that he has are all about intervals between a top melody and a bottom melody, the cantus firmus. So I liken this to a suspension bridge, where if you have, this is your note, this is your cantus firmus note, and let me just show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so you have like a line like this. Let me get, yeah, okay. So if you have this line, this is your cantus firmus, and we're thinking about how to match notes to it. And Fuchs was talking about composition, but here we're talking about improvisation. So I likened it to a suspension bridge. So every pillar, I call them pillar notes. You have one note and one note. Counterpoint always happens right before and right after that note change. So if I have this note and then this note, if I do an 8, okay, that's correct. If I go, that's correct. It's because you can put as much as you want. You can go. Still correct. It's because counterpoint is all about where the change happens. So you can do anything in between. And so that all the rules are based on this. So the rules are there to automatically help you create an independent phrase. And the goal of any phrase is you start with rest, you build the tension, and then you release the tension. And you can see this like a phrase like this, even in just one note, one line by itself. Here it is at rest, and then it creates tension because you've moved away from the note. And then you're back to the note. That's our goal of the shape we want for a line. So all of the counterpoint is based on ratios of intervals. If you really break it down, it's the physics of the music, where if you have an octave here, that's just 2 vibrations on this note per 1 vibration in this note. It's the most simple you can get besides unison. And then on the other hand, you have tritone, which is really dissonant because you have 45 vibrations to 32 vibrations. And this is how our ear hears things. The more complex it is, the more unstable, the more dissonant it is. So counterpoint is all about balancing this, like alchemy. You try to balance your stable with your unstable. And you go from most stable, which we call perfect consonances, to your imperfect consonances, which are less stable, but they're still stable enough. It's 6 3/3. And then we have 7th, 4th. And these are the spicy intervals. This is what you want to use to create interest, but you always come back to your simple, perfect, imperfect consonances. And the whole history of Western art music is this move from knowing how to work with the perfect consonances and then knowing how to work with the imperfect consonances. It used to be that 3rds and 6ths were considered dissonant. And then later in the Baroque period, they became a consonant interval. And now in modern music, we use all of these all the time. But that's how this evolution happened. Another thing is the types of motion. There's 4 types of motion in when you do counterpoint. There's oblique motion, which I talked about earlier. You can move around while you're holding a note like this. So this is holding and this is moving. And you can do contrary. It's moving together or moving apart. You can do parallel. This is 3-3-3. And you can do similar motion. Now, all of these, Fuchs has rules about these, but they are for composition because you can really plan out what you're going to do in advance. I took these and made my own kind of rules based on how you improvise with this. So oblique motion here is the easiest type because there's no counterpoint applying. There's no rules. You can move around and it's all flows perfectly. Contrary motion is what I think is the easiest motion to improvise in because you fulfill the rules automatically. You won't get parallel fifths and eighths. You will, if you're always going against, you can jump to your desired intervals. Now, also easiest is the parallel ones where you go 3-3-3, or you go 6 in succession. And this is stable enough that you can move around in them, but also not so stable that it sounds too much. So when we do parallels, though, the main point of all these rules is we don't want parallel fifths and parallel octaves because they're just stagnant. You can hear it instantly that they're, it sounds like we're in the medieval times. Yeah. And it's because they're just so stable that it doesn't really provide much interest outside of, it doesn't provide a direct difference between the two melodies that you're having go on. You just have everything parallel in succession. So we want to avoid fifths and eighths. And also the biggest motion we want to avoid is similar motion, because this is the one that gets you into the trouble. If you start like this, if you start with 3, here, I'll switch to the keyboard for this. Okay. Let's say I started with this. Right. When you do similar, you're getting into parallel fifths and automatically. But let's say we want to do something where we go contrary. You can see when I go down on this one goes up, and when this goes up, this goes down, and same with parallel. So these are automatic rules that will help anything you do sound good. Now let's get to the actual doing of it. So if you have, let's say we have this cantus firmus, your goal is to add another melody to this. So basically this is your bass line, and then you're going to add a soprano. You want to avoid repeated notes, and you only use them if necessary, and only one time. And if you leap, you want to not do it too much, and if you do, usually you go step down if you leaped up, or if you leap down, you go step up. And what I like to do is, I see this as my theme, I instantly break it down into a shape, not notes. So I see up, down. So now I know that my improvised line against it can be down, up, or I can do down and then some kind of parallel and then up, something like that. So in Fuchs's treatise, the first species is one note against one note. And this is by far the most useful, because if you look at any music from any period, any Western music, you'll notice that this is kind of the backbone of anything you see. Like just open a piece of Bach or think, you just count the intervals, you'll see, okay, there's a G in the bass, there will be in the melody a B or a D or a E, and you see it going in 8, 3, 6s, like that. And if it's Bach, you'll almost never see a parallel fifth, parallel octave. So here's an example. We want everything to be consonant, no dissonant notes here. So I have this as my bass line. And then I'm going to pair it with these notes. So you can see what happens here is we have to start with an 8 or 5, a perfect consonance, and then we get into more and then we jump to a 6. And we can do another one. We can start with a 5. So let me change to keyboard. Okay, this is my theme. We could start with a 5 and then go into 3. And end with a 5. So this is where I want to open this up for participation. So let me get this theme chart out. Well, first I want to ask, are there any questions? You can raise your hand with the little reactions button, and let's see. Do you see any questions? Okay. Well, I'd like to have a brave person try this out. Anyone. We're gonna, let's take this theme right here, this G major one, number 3. And then we're going to put one note to one note to that.
I'm happy to try it.
Okay, Caroline, let's do it.
So,
Oh wait, you're muted. Oh, should I mute? I mute off? Okay.
you stay unmuted, I think.
Okay. Okay, so the theme is G, C, D, G.
And against that, I'll do.
Yes, very good. So Caroline started with an 8. I'll get the keyboard up. Okay, Caroline started with an 8. And then she did a 3rd, and then a 3rd, and then an 8th. And that fulfills the rules. And you can come up with another one. Try starting with a 5th and going from it.
And I have to end with?
5 or 8. So we start with.
Oh no.
You can? Yeah,
can't do that.
That's good. You can.
Can you?
So
Okay.
you can go 8, 5, 8. Yeah, you just can't do 8, 8, 8 or 5, 5, 5. But you could do. Yeah. We're in the same room, by the way. That's why I'm looking this way. But yeah, so that works. Yeah, so you can see there's many possibilities within these. And let me just show you a little step further. When you have this as your background, the goal of this is then you can insert your creativity into that and it will be correct. So that's where we're heading. And you'll see that come alive as we go through these steps. Any questions about that? before we move on? Okay, let's go on to the second species. Okay. Okay, so first species is 1 against 1. Second species is 2 notes against 1 note. So you have the downbeats are just like your first species, but your upbeats can have a dissonance only as a passing tone. So this example is here. You have 3 going to a 4, which is dissonant, but then it resolves to a 6 here. Now, one thing you might be thinking is, how am I going to track intervals as I'm playing? If you're improvising, how do you do this? At first, it's going to be counting them, but as it gets more fluent, you don't count them anymore. For example, I just feel, when I'm improvising, I feel here's a 6 and I run with that, and here's a 3rd and I run with it. So it's like learning a language. First, you have to look at every letter by itself, but then you're going to start to see it all come together, and you're going to see it making words, making sentences. So at first, it's going to be, you have this, and you think, I have an 8, and I'm going to go to, well, a 3rd, well, I could do this. It'll be like that. But then after you go, yeah, I've gotten to the point where if I see a line, I can automatically put it together, and that's the goal where we're trying to reach. So here's second species. You have 2 notes to 1 note. And you can start with a rest too. You just like for species, you have to start with a 5 or 8, and you have to follow the rules of no parallel fifths or octaves. So I could go. I could do something like that. Anyone want to try second species? Carolyn, would you like to?
Should I use that same theme?
Let's do the G, C, D, G one. Very good. So she did. So if we count them, we go 8, 7. Now that's a dissonant one, but it's passing tone. It goes directly into this 3rd, to the 5th, to the 3rd, to 5th, 8, like that. So, and I'm not sure if I forgot to mention, but these intervals you always count from the bottom to the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3. Very good. Let's go now to the third species, which predictably is just stepping up 1 from that second species. Yes, Ika has a question. Yes, Ika.
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So actually about the first species.
Okay.
So when Carolyn did her second example, starting with the 5th, everything was perfect intervals, like so perfect 5th octave, and then so what did she do?
It was
perfect 5th octave and 5th.
She
yeah,
did.
something like that.
Okay, she did. Yes.
Yeah, is that considered parallel octaves and fifths, and is that allowed?
It's not. That's allowed because she didn't go or it's only not allowed to do consecutive 8, 8, 5, 5. In that species, this is more of the background to music ahead of it, and then it's okay. So yeah, because that's going 5, 8, 5, 8. So if you intersperse them, it's okay. But I'd say in first species, it's okay. If you do it when you're doing like third species, second species, that's where it gets a little bit off, because you want to get into more of your imperfect intervals. But for that one, I think it's okay. Yeah, but then I think the most elegant is when you go from perfect, and then in the middle you have imperfect, and you go perfect at the end. So you like that. That way you have a line that's going, more dissonant back to consonant. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to third species now. So third species is just like the jump from first to second species is the jump from second to third species. We have now 4 notes against 1 note. So this is cumulative. Everything from the first and second rolls up high. The big difference is the downbeat has to be consonant. So you see in this example, we have an 8, we have a 6, a third, 6th, a third, and an 8. But then beats 2 and 3 can have dissonances. You just can't leap into them. So you can't, suddenly go C, B, like a 7th leap. You can't. Yeah, but then if it's part of a downwards line or something like that, it's totally fine. So you can see here, I'm aiming for these pillars. This is where it gets into starting to get into real music rather than theoretical. So I have, the way I problem solve this is I see this note and I see this note. Before I'm even here, I'm already thinking, what am I gonna pair here? What interval I do? Okay, I know I'm gonna do a C to a C. That'll be my first species. Then I just link it. I say, what are all the different ways I can go from this C to that C? I could do that. I could do that. I could go many possibilities, as long as you just have 3 spaces right here, and then you aim for that. And when you put that all together and you chain it, while I'm here, I'm thinking about this, and I chain that. While I'm here, I'm looking at that, and then I chain that there. This is where I really start feeling the suspension bridge analogy, where you have this pillar note, and then you do a suspension to the next one. I'm from San Francisco, so I guess the Golden Gate Bridge analogy just comes natively. But first, okay, and then you chain it. And you can see when you put that all together, you get this nice flowing line that sounds like it pairs well with your bass line. So anyone want to try the third species on our other theme? This third one, G, C, D, G.
Sure, I'll give it a try.
Great.
See if you can hear me from where I am.
Very good. Very good. So what Caesar did is no, sorry, Stephen. I'm sorry. This Zoom
all good. No worries.
Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot exactly what happened.
Oh.
Can you do it one more time? Okay. Okay, this is what Stephen did. So let's analyze it. If you break it down to the first species, it's So this is all wonderful. The only little thing is at the beginning and end in Fuchs's treatise, it has to be a 8 or a 5th. So you could,
Okay.
or something like that. But other than that, it's really good. For real music, that's perfectly fine. It's really good. Thank you. Thanks for that example.
Thank you.
Let's go now. Now we're getting to the hardest species now, which is the 4th species. This is suspension, and this takes 2nd species and adds what we call ligatures, where you offset. So you and we've all probably heard of suspension chains. That's when we take a ligature of one line here, and you make 7/6 happen, or you make 4/3 happen. So you go 6, 7, 6, or you have 4/3, and just so you see on the keyboard, or 7. So the way to do this is you have, first we look at, okay, where am I going to put my suspension chain? It has to go at a part that is going down stepwise consistently. So this is the part we see here. And we see here, okay, I can put a 4 to 3 here. So here's, and then we can get out of it like that. Another one can work here is the 7/6. So 6, so we can do that. And then we work backwards from it. This part you can do in 2nd species and lead up, or if you're feeling brave, you can go all the way in ligatures. You can go, now this 4th species, it's for suspensions. It's an exercise for knowing how to improvise or compose suspensions. And therefore it doesn't work for everything. So you can look at themes and see which ones work. For example, this one has, a suspension will work here, but a suspension would not work on this one. Because although you could do maybe 1 here, but you would need to have set it up with the ligatures in this in this example. So let's find one that can do it. Here's a good one. Okay, so B flat major. I want to give Carolyn a go at this really quick. Can you do a 4th species on the B flat one? So this goes, and you see that the downward part with the suspensions will happen first, and then you go into 2nd species for the end. Very good, very nice. So Carolyn did. So you can see that she was using a 5 to start, going to 6, and that helped set us up into the 7/6. Like that. Now, this is where we make the big jump. Thank you, Carolyn. This is where we make the big jump from what Fuchs called musica speculativa to musica activa. So we have all of our rules now. Now we put them all together. Yes, Carolyn has a question.
I think I just realized that when I did, isn't that a dissonance on a pillar with the 4?
Ah, yes. So that's one of those where in the exercise, it's considered incorrect, but then in real music, you see it all the time. Yeah. So this is where it gets a little, I'm not sure the word right now, but like it gets a little fuzzy because we have, we're going into real music. But yeah, that's 4, 4 to 3. Although it does work because in this species, you want dissonance on the first, on your first downbeat, and then you go into, yeah. It's almost like you were chaining together a suspension where you went from 7/6 to 4/3, and then down to your unison. Good question. So yes, we're going now into the 5th species. This is the arrival point that we're after. So this is free. It's all of the species put together, and this is where you reach that moment of, aha, this sounds like real Baroque music now. And it might seem like a big jump at first, but then if you look back, our whole goal for every one of these was to start with more stability, and with stability and have dissonance and have dissonance, and just we want to have a climax point in the middle and arrive at the end like this. So when we were doing that with intervals, but now we can also do it with rhythm. So to me, that means, if I just start rhythmically, I might start with 1-1 and then go into 1 and 2 and maybe do something 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to a syncopated part and go here. And when I put notes to that and I make something up, you can see here I'm doing 4th species, and I get into ligatures here, third species, going to 4th species, and then I do this little cadenza ending. So let's hear this. Yeah. And you can see now with all these species in mind that the backbone is still quite simple. You have an 8 here, 3rd here, 7 to 6 suspension chain, and then 6 to 8, and we just put florid counterpoint on it. We just ornament it a little bit with this line. So now this is the real fun part. When you have that, you can also try flipping your hands, and it usually will work just as well. I'm working with a little 3-octave keyboard, so that's why I have to jump that, but you get the idea. So now we've arrived at florid counterpoint. So I want to go down here and put Carolyn on the spot one more time. And can you make up a florid counterpoint for this G major, please?
No. Can I go again?
Very good. Okay, so Carolyn did. Okay, so let's break it down. We start with 8, very good. So that's the 3rd species. And then we ended with 4th turning into, 3rd species, going into 2nd species. I always get that confused because 4 notes to 1 note is 3rd species. 2 notes to 1 note is 2nd species. And then here we have 4th species, the suspension. And voila, we have ending at the 8th, a nice phrase. So now I really want to have more people try this, I want to open up to any species. So anyone can try any of these. Maybe the G major one or the B flat major ones are good ones to start with. So a C major, and you can try a first species, try a third species, try a anything. Don't be shy. Isaac, thank you.
Sorry, just unmute, right?
Yes, we hear you. Okay, let me repeat it back. Sorry, can you do it one more time, please? Okay.
No,
Was that wrong?
no, I go to the 6 on the C.
Ah, yes, okay. And then very good. Yeah, that was a really good one. Thank you. Yeah, that's a very, very good example. Anyone else want to try? This is exciting. We're making good progress.
I'll give a stab at one. Try a floor.
Okay, great. Very nice. Very, very good. Oh, I forgot to put that on the keyboard. Oops. Yeah, very nice.
Oh no, I tried to do a chain for that.
Oh, you did?
Sorry.
Ah. Oh.
That's what I did for try to chain in one spot.
I see.
He holds the G over
Oh.
from this change. So makes sense. Go ahead.
No, you go. That was a delay. Oh, I hear it. Okay. Yeah, that was a nice suspension. Very good.
Getting better and better.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Making me look better.
No, it's great. It's great. So you can all see that when you put these simple steps together and you combine them, you could even do it very formulaic. Like my first measure, I'm going to do first species, and then my second measure will be second species. Third measure will be third species, and then some kind of cadenza that instantly makes a florid line. So now looking back at these, I think you know where this is heading. When you chain these together, you get an automatic Passacalia. Okay, so if I take this one, let's say I take the C major, okay, I'm gonna do first species, and then second species, third species. I'm gonna skip 4 species for now and go straight into 5th species, but I'm just gonna do 4 in a row, and I'm gonna do each species as well. So you'll hear this. And actually, I'm gonna show you on the keyboard so you can follow. So there you have a very simple Passacalia. And now if we look back, so the reason I composed these in this order is these are different difficulty levels. So if you start with this one here, the difficulty is how short it is. Now you might think, well, that's not difficult, it's short. But actually, what's difficult about it is the inventiveness. You have to invent the next one very quickly. So first you should practice just doing it, I'm gonna do my first species. And then you think, okay, what's next? And then you go into your second species. Ah, yes, New Haven, oh yeah.
That's New Haven AGO. Me, Stephen.
Yes, Stephen.
Sorry, it's okay. I had a question. So, how does it work in triple time?
Ah, yeah, okay. So basically, Fuchs doesn't have, well, Fuchs gets into it later in the book, but it's the same principle as third species. You have one pillar note, and then you go triple it, and then you go into your next pillar. So let's say I wanted to go. Okay, let's put on the keyboard. So I have an 8 here, and a 3, 3, 8. So I would chain it together with like third species, 4 to 1. Instead, I do 3 to 1.
Okay.
Or let's say I do a 5 at first. Or I can go on and on, but yeah, that's a very good question. So these 3 species are not, these are just exercises, but you can extrapolate to all sorts of different rhythms and things like that. Another rhythm, I could do a long, short with that same one.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So this practice exercise I like to do, I like to give students is you go through it and you do each of the species 1, 2, 3, 5 for all of them. First with it in the left hand, and then the other one with putting it in the right hand. So let's say I did, and I did all of them. Then I come back and I put this now in the right hand. Keyboard. Now I think of what can I put in the bass that will go to these soprano notes. And it's all the same rules. It's no parallel fifths, no parallel octaves. You want to land on the thirds and the sixths in the middle. And it's a third species. Now you'll quickly notice that there are certain little things, you'll start to notice patterns in what you do, and that's a good thing. It's like when you're doing a language learning, let's say Spanish or French or something, at first you have to think about every little article. Oh, was this a le croissant or la croissant? Like you have to think about that. But as you get into the language, you don't have to think about that anymore. It kind of just goes second nature. Same thing with these. When you're doing, let's see, when you're doing a third species like this, you at first you have to think of every one, but then you start to notice that there's certain patterns. Like if I do this, I land on the same note, or that's not the one. Jeffrey Brillhart, my improv teacher, now likes to do. He calls it predicting the outcome, where it's if you're on a here, if you're on if you want to land on a sixth, you go to the third from it. So if I want to land here, E here, and then count up 6, then I can start the second beat on the G, the third. So, and then I know that I'm going to get there. there's certain little cheats techniques that you can use at this. Basically, that's just to say, as you get more into this, you'll find more fluency as you find little patterns and stuff. But for now, we're about almost break time, so I just want to end up to the break time with this, that this is a good way to practice, is you just take this. This is a short one, and as you go here, it gets harder because you get to longer ones. These ones, you really have to maintain a high level of counterpoint all the way to the end, and that's what makes it difficult. But then it's a little easier in inventiveness in that you can keep going all the way through for first species, and then all the way through second species, all the way through third species, fourth, fifth, etc. But I recommend starting with the small one first and working your way down. Let's go to break time, and we'll come back at 6:05 in 5 minutes Eastern time. We're going to turn this into real music with Passacalia. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to share screen now. Okay. So I'm going to turn now to the 6th page of my handout. This is where we start to get interesting. We take our theoretical knowledge from the species counterpoint and turn it into real music. So the first thing is, what does real music do with this counterpoint? A huge thing is compound line. It's Bach uses this famously all the time, especially in his cello suite number 1, which we all know. And I'll just play it for you and you'll instantly recognize it. So there we have it. Now, the trick question I like to ask everyone is, how many voices are in here? How many voices is this? Anyone?
Three voices?
Yeah. So this is one voice playing at a time, but it's actually 3 voice when you look at it contrapuntally. So if we drag out the notes, we have G, D, B. You see that we have 3 notes there. And I'll do it one more time. That's where we get this ornamented version. So it shows you how powerful these counterpoint rules are. You can take one line and create a whole three voice melody with it. And this is done by jumping around. We arpeggiate between them. So what I like to show about this is, if you have your pillars, you can do a lot of stuff in between them. Here's a pillar, here's a pillar, and you can do this, and you can do that, and you can do that. There's so much freedom, and that's where we get into real music. Same with let's see, the pedal exercitium. So you can see one voice and the second voice. So if we put them together, smush it together, we get. Now let's count the intervals. So here we're going 5, if we look at the 2 bottom voices, 6, 7 to 8. we're just expanding here. And here, the middle voice to the top voice. There we have 6, 6, 5, 6, a dissonant 5, it's a diminished 5, going to 3. And then we stack that together, our bass and our soprano. This is a pedal tone, G, and we have the 3, 4, 3. So all that together, same with here. 3s. You'll notice that we always start with consonant. So I show this because this is just like back here when we're talking about our suspension bridge. If you have your basses here, your top note and the bottom note here on both sides, you can do whatever you want in here and it will sound good. Not whatever you want, but you can do a lot of stuff. You can do anything in the chord. And that's when we get into harmony. So we've been talking about counterpoint this entire time, but when we get into harmony, what is harmony? Well, now we think of it as 1, 4, 5 chords. We think of it as, you know, Roman numeral, but the way it came about was 1, 4, 5, all the Roman numerals are just codifying what was already developing in contrapuntally with the figure bass and all that. All it is just stacking counterpoint on top of each other. So you had like this. Back in Baroque times, if you had this, you might say, okay, we can do this. And then you might say we have this solution too. And then you just put them on top of each other. And there we have harmony. And then later, that turned into a system of figure bass where you knew just with a bass line and your numbers that this would work if you did these certain solutions. And then that became what we have now, where we think in full Roman numeral chords and everything. So let's get back to the handout. So I have to move some stuff around. Okay. Yes. So what I like to do with this is we use the Counterpoint to make up compound line melodies using the same pillar notes. So we go back here and we use the same rules. So we can't do parallel fifths or eighths, but let's go back here to do this. Here's an example. I can do here, I'll use the first one. So notice that with compound line, I'm only doing one note at a time. Instead of before, I was doing this. Now I'm keeping those exact pillar notes, but I'm gonna do stuff in between. See, I was going back and forth with bass note, soprano note. Let me do a simpler one. If I just went. So this is where I'm pretty much having three voices, but you can start to see now, take your knowledge of Roman numerals or the harmony that we have, that in our time we use all the time, and put it together with the counterpoint. And that's when you have this mix of the two. So if we have our solution and we have another solution, put it together. If we block chord it, it's really just a C major to F major, C major, G major, C major. holding all those notes down just to show all of the different options you have within a line like that. Yes, Ika has a question.
Yes, I have a question. So from, I guess I still don't really see how from the block chord and then when you're moving to the compound line, how did you break it?
Yes. So I always start with the bass note. Let's use this example. So I have the bass note, and then I have, remember with the first species solution, we did this. So I can go and that's just following. That's following our old line. This is where we get into ornamentation. There's so many different ways you can go around a certain note. You can do a mordant. You can go underneath it. You can do a trill. You can go up to the third and back. But you see how all of them are based on. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, ornamented. So you were at so the one way to understand a compound line is it's an ornamented second voice, something like that.
Yeah. So it's, you take your second voice and it's still, you're using one voice at a time. You're only one note at a time, but you hear the two voices even though it's one voice. That's the basic definition of compound line, is you're only playing one note at a time, but you are implying more than one voice. So I'm implying this. At the very simplest, it's just like going, but it's using exactly the same rules as before with our counterpoint rules.
Thank you.
If anyone's brave, I'd like you to just try making a compound line with this one. Maybe something very simple, just like we did for species before, just alternate between bottom voice and the top voice. Yes, Jay.
Hi there. I'll
Hi.
try.
Great.
Let's see.
Very, very nice. Very nice. Yeah, that was very good. So Jay was doing something like that. You're doing a figuration on top. The only thing is, that compound line would take off the bass with it, so it would, so instead of holding. But other than that, it was really good. That's actually great for Passacalia.
I wasn't holding the left hand notes. Is that what you mean?
I know. For a compound line, you would not hold it. You'd only do one note at a time. Yeah. But then what you did is great for our next step, which is Passacalia, because that's when you hold the bass line and you do other things on top of it. So that's a really good step. To make a compound line, you just not hold it. So yeah, but very nice. Thank you. And this one line kind of thing would work great for, cello or pedal solos, things like that. I often use this for if I'm improvising in the style of Buxtehude or something. You can do like that kind of thing where I'm really thinking, but I'm alternating, because that's a very Baroque gesture. Now that compound line brings us into Passacalia, and this is the goal I want to reach for today's session. And in the next session, we're going to go all the way back through the species to Passacalia, and because this really solidifies, I love Passacalia's Shikans. It really solidifies an understanding of how counterpoint goes together with harmony, and you can use the same exact harmony and same exact chords to figure out, it's like I call it a sandbox. It's like you figure out all of the things you can do within a certain chord, within a certain thing, and you use these patterns that you discover to then improvise other forms. So first thing is, what is the Passacalia Shikan? Basically, it's you take one line, where is it? You take one of these lines, for example, I have as my first example the Pachelbel canon in D, which is not really a canon, it's a Passacalia, but repeating bass line. And you can find chords on it. So now, how did I find the chords? I just make up a bunch of counterpoint, to it. So I could do this. I could go. And that's where you might say, I leaped into a fifth. Well, technically not allowed in the exercises, but then when you get to real music and this is embedded inside of a bunch of different voices, it's okay. So and we can voice it differently. And here you can see how Pachelbel was composing. You have that repeated bass line. And then you add one voice. And then you add another voice. And then you can do some figuration. And that's just like our compound line, except now we're holding things and putting it together as one chord. So the main takeaway from this is we have melody, we have our way of having a soprano line that we made from our bass line, and we just fill in the chord. So here's the example. We have D major, and then A major, B minor, F sharp minor, G, 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 A. And you can do this for each of these. You find chords that you like. What chord will work here? And you can either write in your Roman numeral or write in the notes for them. And then from there, we're going to extrapolate patterns. So this is where I get into what makes a good Passacalia. This is where I have the analogy of an airplane. You want to take off your airplane very smoothly. You don't want to go, whoa, up, and you don't want to, basically you don't want to kill the passengers. You want to make it all very, very nice. Now, what's the problem of the exercise that I gave for the species counterpoint? It's very utilitarian. It does a great job at getting you through first species, second species, third species. It's great exercise to do that way. But as a Passacalia, it's not very musically good because you have jumps. When you go from there's a huge jump between going from first species to third species, or first to second. But if you look at some examples by Buxtehude or Bach, for example, here's the Chakan from the famous Prelude, Fugue, and Chakan in C major by Buxtehude. You can see here first what happens. here's the repeating bass line. And there it ends. So it's a 3-measure cell. First, we got quarter notes and little eighth notes. And then we've got more eighth notes, and we have more ligatures and more suspensions. And now this is mostly eighth notes. And then more eighth notes. And then we have a drop off. Suddenly now it's in the left hand. And this reduces tension. But that reduces tension just long enough for it to go fully eighth notes. And then we go all the way into 16th notes, and all the here we end with 32nd notes. So you notice with the rhythm, we're stepping it up gradually. We're going from quarter notes to eighths to 16th to 32nd if we extrapolate the big picture. Similarly, here is an excerpt from Marcel Dupre's Improvisation treatise, which shows the parts of the C minor Pascalian fugue by Bach. And he says some of the variations are rhythmic, and we have others that are melodic, some are harmonic, and some are contrapuntal. And there's so much you can take from one thing that you can turn it into a whole bunch of stuff. But the thing is that it all fits together in a way that, just like we were doing at the beginning, where you have one line and you want to make tension and release with this one line, that's what makes the piece tick too. You have a piece and you want to start with simple and go a little more complex, a little more complex. In this way, a Passacalia is a gradus ad pronounctum in a piece. You get more and more complex as you go along until you finally reach big chords or something. So this gets us thinking about what musical parameters get us from small to big there. We can add voices. On the organ, we're blessed with so many stops to choose from. We can do registration changes. I mean that both figuratively and literally. You can change the registration. You can also move your register. You can start low and go high, and the higher you go, the more intense it is. You can start with rests. You could go. You can take the theme out of the bass like Buxtehude did, put it in the left hand, bring it back, change the harmony, but we'll save that for later. Right now you have the same chords, but think of all the ways you can change it. So I want to stop talking so much and actually let some examples happen. So let's try something simple like this one. Now here you'll notice I put the smaller one at the end, the longer ones at the beginning. That's because I think for Passacalia, doing real music, not the counterpoint exercises, when you have a long thing like this, it's easier. You have one pattern at the beginning, and you just put it down to the end. Let me show what not to do. Let me show what a bad way to do this is. Or another one. Okay, anyone want to say what's wrong? What's wrong with that in a Passacalia?
Changing the texture too often.
Yes, very good. So in a Passacalia, we want to have a gradual increase. So, and not only in the overall form, but in the little cell of one iteration, one variation. So what I like to do is this directly helps you in improvisation with the goal of being ahead one step. Just like in sight reading, you're always one step ahead of what you're actually playing. In improvisation, you want to be a little bit ahead of what you're actually playing. So when I'm thinking through this, I see, okay, I'm playing the bass line by itself to start the piece. And in the middle of that, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do for the next round while I'm still playing this round? And that's when I think, okay, I'm going to do rest, dum, Okay, so I'm going to do that. And here I do this. Okay, so I did that for here. Then I extrapolate. This is all muscle memory now. I don't have to think about the rest because it's exactly the same. Like that. And what I tell my students a lot is, if you have a great idea, step it back 5 iterations, because there are so many little gradations you can do to go to this. You can go I should have had keyboard on for that to be better, but you can see how my idea is, and I took that and I deconstructed it 5 steps back and said, what can I do to make that be the goal and reach up to that? And then once I reach that goal, then I can notice that I'm within the chord all the time. And I know that parallel thirds will work. Or I know that parallel 6 would. Not in that key, it would work if I did like that. But so you see how you can gradually step up. And that's where I say it's like the plane. You want to have a nice takeoff with your repeating bass line, and you gradually accelerate and get up in the air by doing little tiny iterations that are different. And it's an exploration. You'll find certain ways of doing it that will help you get more and more energetic up into the climax of the piece. Now, okay, let's see. I want to, Carolyn, can you please help give a little demonstration of this? Let's give you a theme. Can you do B flat major, that third one? Mm-hmm. Now, let's see. Actually, I think it'd be better if you do it at the organ. Okay, here. So I'm gonna give Carolyn the organ right here. And can you bring that page with the ones? So we're gonna have Carolyn demonstrate this. I'm gonna stop sharing screen so you can see here. The theme is we're gonna use that. Okay. Let's make sure we can hear it. Okay. If we do this, is this sounding all right?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's try one more.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Got it. that line. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah. So Carolyn did a wonderful job with that. That's exactly what I wanted to demonstrate. Is when you get to more complex stuff, you start to hit a glass ceiling of, you know, what can I do that's not too contrapuntally intense, so that it's improvisable, not right. And the goal here is, so you remember how there's the pillars. When you have pillar notes, that's where the counterpoint happens. That's what you use to your advantage when you're improvising. So if you're doing things on the beat, that's where you're gonna have to deal with counterpoint. But if you use a lot more syncopated, or you do the bass first and then you do other things, you can not worry about counterpoint. Also is if you keep in the chord, it will automatically be contrapuntally correct actually. So if I go, so let's say instead of going, this was Carolyn's second voice when she was doing other stuff up here. This makes me worry about the two notes here. If I'm going, if I do some kind of figuration, or if I do some kind of, now you might say this is doubling the octave, but this is okay. Now it's okay when you do double octave if it's textural. So if you're doing one line to one line, it's not okay because you're trying to make the lines as different as possible, make two really distinct lines. Here is, in real music, you'll notice a lot of times you'll have the bass doing this, and you'll have your left hand going. Right? It's okay to follow it as long as it's a textural thing, and as long as your melody's not doing that. It's your inner continuo is doing that, it's fine. But very good. And you see that you can, Carolyn did a wonderful job of getting our plane up to 10,000 feet, you know, our figurative plane, because she started with, and I liked how she kept one voice all the way, and then she added a little more and added a little more, and then the second voice didn't come in until maybe 5 iterations in, and yeah, that was a very good example. Thank you. So this is where I'd like to open it up to questions. Are there any questions so far? Okay, great. This is also where I'd like to open it up for anyone to try these. So maybe we can pause the recording and then come back at the end.
For sure. I'll pause it now.
See, okay, great.
There we go.
Okay, so we just had a great question about minor in Passacalia. Let me go back to that. Okay, so let's see. Ah, yes, here's a minor one. Okay, G minor. So here's where we'll get into some harmony. So these are my options. I have those are my notes, and that's my theme. So most of all, with minor, there's 2 possibilities with the leading tone, which is the 7th. You can do that, or you can do, and that's where we get into some harmony. So we can go to a D minor chord there. So all of that first part is the same as major, just in the minor key. It's this part that's tricky. That's what we call the modal way. That's Renaissance style. You can already hear it sounds modal because we're doing it that way without the leading tone. Leading tone way would be tonal. So this is just, we're doing a D major chord instead of the D minor chord. So when we go to things like this, that's where you would you could do it that way tonally, or so it's just a question of, do you want it to sound more Renaissance, more early Baroque, or do you want it to sound later Baroque with your tonality? That's the thing to watch out for in the minor keys. Along with that is the sixth leading up to it. So we all may have heard, well, this was one thing that was interesting to me when I was a little kid doing piano, doing all of our scales. I thought, well, why do we have to do one for major and we have to do all of these three scales for minor? And then I realized it's because of this. You have your natural minor, where you have, if I'm in, let's do A minor just to make it easy. And then you have your harmonic minor, and you have your melodic minor. And melodic minor goes down when it goes down, and it goes up on the 6th and the 7th when you go up. Whereas harmonic minor goes, and then natural minor, yeah. Stephen has a question. Just want to make sure.
No, my bad. I was going to ask exactly about that. The sixth race.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, thanks. So with that raised sixth, it's about the melodic minor, and it's called that because it's for melodies only. The harmonic minor is, these are your options. A scale is just your list of options. So if I'm doing it tonally, those are the ones I can use. But if I'm doing a sixth scale degree on this, let's see, let's use one of our themes. Ah, yes, okay, I'll use this and I'll do it tonally. Okay. So I could do this. Now, if I did this, it would sound weird. Because you have that minor second. That's where you have your melodic raised 6th and 7th. So, because you're going up, so. Now if I'm going down, yeah. Well, I would still loop it back up using melodic minor, but yeah, that goes that way. And then the other way, you could make this sound old-fashioned and just do natural minor. That sounds like you're doing maybe Palestrina or something that's Renaissance. But yeah, I hope that answers that. You use your melodic minor and your harmonic minor together if you're doing tonal, and your natural minor only if you're doing modal. Any more questions? And anyone want to try any examples or anything? Stephen?
No takers.
Jay would like.
Jay would like it. All right.
Sure,
Sweet.
I'll try it if you don't mind. I'm
Sure.
trying my
Great.
part here.
I'll also pause the recording.
Great,
my
wonderful.
cat is meowing a lot, so
Oh, it's okay. That's
Cool.
here. We'll do this. Does that work? Does that sound good?
Play it clearer then.
Ethan stops screen sharing so we can see.
Ah, yes.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Ethan.
Great. Okay. And let's see. I will do on page 10. I will do the. I'll do the G minor one because we were discussing about minor. Okay. So this is the one that goes G, F, E flat, D, C, E flat, C, D. Okay. we go. Thank you
That
all
was
for
great,
attending.
Ian. Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Yeah, thank you so much. You got a little loud at the end, but it kind of added to that. Kind of had a little rock.
Oh,
and
I hope
roll
it
vibe.
wasn't. It's probably distorted, but
No, it was great. Thank you so much, Ethan, and thank you all so much for joining us. You can give him a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again on February 20th. At the same time, 5 p.m., also a Sunday. And yeah, we'll share this recording, and anybody that you know who might be interested, please share this with them so that they can join us for the second half. So I guess we all wish you a very productive month of practicing your species counterpoint and Passacalias. Anything
you.
else? Yeah. Thank you, Ian. Well, yeah. Everyone have a great night, and we'll see you in a month.